Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvina vaditamastu, ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Where shall we go to find God if not in our own hearts and in every living being? So said Swami Vivekananda. Where shall we go to find God if not in our own hearts and in every living being? So Happy New Year, everyone. So good to be with you on this new year. And of course, we're studying the book Realizing God. And we are reading and discussing Swami Prabhavananda's talk on the path of devotion, Bhakti Yoga. Before we start, any comments or questions that anyone has about anything at all? It doesn't have to be about what we're studying, just anything that you'd like to remark on or ask.
What is the meaning of life?
That is what the Swami will tell us.
Okay.
in one version, you see. There are all these versions of the meaning of life. So many versions. Of course, that's always a very good question. And does anyone else have anything that they would like to offer or ask?
At my newsletter, all of a sudden, it keeps going to spam. I don't know if something that you guys are doing or what, but it.
Well, you need to make the changes in your email system.
Yeah, I did that.
Okay, and it's still going to spam.
It keeps going to spam.
I have no idea.
It's not on this end. If it's going to spam, you need to create a filter for the Vedanta Center email address, so that it won't go into spam. But there's nothing we can do on our end. It's not a problem on our end.
Okay.
I wish it was, but we can't.
And I accept Cindy's word on this as absolutely authoritative. She knows the internet and the systems of the internet better than anyone I know. So sorry, Robert, but there's no help for it. The MailChimp system delivers it to your address, and if your address keeps saying this is not for me, this is spam, then this Cindy says something has to be done at your end.
Hello, Cindy.
Yes, VJ.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I'd like to ask you some question separately outside the meeting, a technical question. And can you give me your email address or telephone number?
I'll just send it to you. I have your email, VJ. I'll just do it after class. Okay.
Thank you. God bless you.
Okay. So we have the administrivia dealt with as best we can at this point. And so we'll start with the Swami's talk. When we fall in love, it is the love for God, nothing else. And I'm going to say that again because it is central to the idea of the bhakti path, that our love is for the divine and nothing else in all the forms it takes. When we fall in love, it is the love for God, nothing else. That's why when we fall in love for the first time, we feel, oh, it is a divine experience. People say that, you know, oh my God, this is divine. And then the Swami says, oh, with his characteristic humor, wait for 10 days. This love degenerates and there is frustration. It isn't that something has gone wrong. It's just quite natural that we begin to think of ourselves as a personality and the other person as a personality. And so naturally, those things are not going to be what seemed to us to be that divine perfection that they did in the beginning. Wait for 10 days. This love degenerates into the exchange that is typical of human love rather than the pure and selfless love that we experience in the beginning. And there is frustration. Divine love is infinite. When our love is directed towards the infinite, toward God, and if we are aware of that, it finds its fulfillment. And this is the goal of the bhakti path. We direct our love toward God, toward the infinite, and we are aware that that's what we're doing. And so ultimately, it finds its fulfillment. Plato defined love as the desire and pursuit of the whole, that is, the infinite. Narada, a great lover of God, expressed the very nature of love as immortal bliss, which of course is that aspect of Satchidananda, Satchit, Ananda, immortal bliss, absolute bliss, bliss beyond all definition and all limitation. That is why, as I already mentioned, one feels a divine quality when first falling in love. There is such bliss in it. But when it is directed towards something finite and mortal, it doesn't last. It doesn't find fulfillment, and there is frustration. And that's true of everything that we seek in the realm of the finite. There's nothing wrong in that. It's just the nature of Maya. Since its nature is limitation, our fulfillment and our bliss within it will be limited and therefore ultimately frustrating. When we begin to think of God, everything else becomes tasteless. When we begin to think of God, everything else gradually becomes tasteless, slowly and slowly, as Swami Sridharananda says. We don't go from I am, to thou art all at once. Most of us, very few, go from I am to thou art all at once. It happens gradually. When we begin to think of God, everything else gradually becomes tasteless. The path of devotion is really wonderful in this way. You don't have to struggle to gain self-control or anything of the kind, as you do in the path of Raja Yoga, for example, or for that matter, Karma Yoga. As Swami Shivananda says, the secret is to put God at the center of your heart, and everything else takes care of itself. Of course, it's not easy to do that, but it's much easier, according to everyone who speaks of it, writes of it. It's much easier than the other paths. So I'm going to repeat that. The path of devotion is really wonderful in this way. You don't have to struggle to gain control or anything of the kind. You only have to think of God, try to love Him, pray that you may love Him, and that is absolutely central. Pray, pray. It's in all of the prayers. Chaitanya's prayer, breaker of this world's chain, fill this heart full of love for thee. You only have to think of God, try to love Him, pray that you may love Him, and all the baser things of life fall away from you automatically. Now, the Swami used to say this in a different way. He would say, here we are living in the West. The West is the land of death. The West is the land of sinking away, the setting sun. You see the shining light in the East, and it attracts you. You think, oh, I don't want to be in this place that constantly goes dark. I want that shining light that never changes, that is always there. So you begin to move toward it. You begin to move toward it and do the things that are necessary to make it more and more a reality for you every day. He says the things of the West, the things that limit you and keep you there, you automatically leave them behind. You automatically leave them behind. Yes, some will try to cling to you, and you have to say, I release you, I release you. But it's not the struggle that it is in some other ways of going about this. You may ask at this point, but what is God? And that's just a variant on what Cindy asked, not at all facetiously, at the beginning of this conversation. What is the meaning of life? You may ask at this point, but what is God? Both Hindus and Buddhists point out that we should not try to define God, because God cannot be defined. How can you define the infinite? The minute you make any attempt, it becomes, in a way, comical. The infinite cannot be encompassed in finite thought and words. Speech cannot hold thee nor mind. Yet without thee, the infinite. Speech cannot hold thee nor mind, the infinite. Yet without thee, the infinite, we think not nor speak. That's part of the evening prayer. So God cannot be defined. Again, all definitions are true. Once Sri Ramakrishna, who was intimate with God, was asked, Holy Sir, there are so many definitions of God. Some say He is personal, some say He is impersonal, some say He is with form, some say without form, so on and so forth. Now, what is God? These views are all contradictory. Sri Ramakrishna said, Go to the neighborhood of God, and there you will see that all contradictions meet in him. In another place, he said, go to the neighborhood of God, and you will see that all of these contradictions, paradoxes, and questions resolve themselves. Ramakrishna said, go to the neighborhood of God, and then you will see that all contradictions meet in him. He pointed out that the bee makes a big noise before it sits on a flower. But as it sits and begins to suck the honey, it becomes silent. Then again, becoming intoxicated by drinking that honey, it comes out and makes a sweet humming noise. Now, this is, of course, a metaphor for the way our mind behaves before we have all these thoughts and considerations and restlessnesses before we begin to experience the divine. And then when we begin to experience the divine, all becomes quiet, a great silence. And then, as he says, as the Swami says, as you come out of that, you make what he characterizes as a sweet humming noise. This expresses itself in the bhajans and songs and hymns and poems of love and praise for the divine, those sweet humming noises. Before we have known God, we make a big noise about him. But when we sit on the flower and begin to suck the honey, the sweetness of God, we become silent. Then again, becoming God intoxicated, some speak of him in this way, others speak of him in that way. In many ways, the truth is expressed. Truth is one, sages call it by various names, which of course is a quote from the Rig Veda. Of course, the fact is that God is within. He is your very self. But how can you know the self? How can you meditate on the self? The eyes cannot see themselves. You have to stand before a mirror to see. You have to stand before a mirror to see your own eyes. So God, in his great mercy, sends or gives full knowledge of Brahman in individuals, mirrors. In every age, in every religion, there is someone to worship. A perfect mirror is Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, or Ramakrishna. A perfect mirror. A perfect mirror. And the Swami does not say the word perfect carelessly or idly. They have, as it is said in the Chandi, shed all the blemishes. They are perfect. They are perfected. A perfect mirror is Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, or Ramakrishna. You may try to conceive of God and imagine God, but if you study the lives of the great ones, you will find that their lives are paths. You will find that their lives are paths. Any conception you may have, you see in them. So as we study the life of any of these great ones, our heart responds. Our heart responds because we sense the truth. The deepness within us resonates to the truths that they say. What is the method to love? You have your chosen ideal, and you practice some ethical virtues, and also repeat or chant the name of the Lord, as Chaitanya's prayer says, chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust. Now, I can't emphasize often enough, this is a promise from the very perfect mirror face of the divine, Sri Chaitanya. Chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that is, every day, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean. First promise. The mirror of the heart will be wiped clean, so the reflection becomes perfectly accurate. That the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust. Second promise. All of the disturbances, distractions, and so on, slowly and slowly, are extinguished, quenched. And then the Swami quotes a Christian saint, by the way, a very great favorite of Swami Yogeshananda. You can, in the archives that are on the website of the center, you can find a great deal of writing about Meister Eckhart by Swami Yogeshananda. So the Swami quotes, as Meister Eckhart said, the soul in her hot pursuit of God becomes absorbed in him, and she herself is reduced to thought, just as the sun will swallow up and put out dawn. The soul in her, notice the feminine gender here, the divine being within us, Saguna Brahman, is seen by many of the saints, including Sri Ramakrishna, as feminine. The soul in her hot pursuit of God becomes absorbed in him, and she herself is reduced to thought, not to thought, to not. I'm going to read this again because I twice read it wrong. The soul in her hot pursuit of God becomes absorbed in him, and she herself is reduced to naught, N-O-U-G-H-T, nothing, is reduced to naught, just as the sun will swallow up and put out dawn. Whoever would see God must be dead to himself and buried in God. So now let me read that again. Now that I've read it correctly, let me read this. As Meister Eckhart said, the soul in her hot pursuit of God becomes absorbed in him, and she herself is reduced to naught, just as the sun will swallow up and put out dawn. Whoever would see God must be dead to himself and buried in God. Okay, it's getting close to the half hour. We've covered some ground here. Are there any questions or thoughts or comments that you'd like to offer at this point about what the Swami has been saying about the path of devotion and the clarity of the fact that whatever we love, we're loving it because it is the divine being. But when we focus on that as material, as part of time, space, and causation, our love becomes something else. It becomes human in its scope rather than divine, and so ends up being frustrating. Any of those thoughts and those that follow, anything at all?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Vijay.
On the specific item that you said, in my mind, I compare it more to a child being born. The child is free of any outside influence, free of any, call it outside pressures. And slowly as the child grows up, picks up all of these from the Maya. And the same thing with the newborn love that initially is divine and picks up mud on the way. And the question that came to my mind as we were describing, does this mean that initially the love that appeared so divine is losing its connection with God or influence of divinity?
No, no, not at all. It loses nothing. It does not change. It's us. It's we that change. And when we change to where we are doing the things necessary to make the heart a more perfect mirror, then that divine love does not disappear, does not degrade into our materialism and our vanity, where we think of it's me doing it and it's the other person doing it. No. We are the ones, through the influence of the gunas, we are constantly, our prarabdha karma, that karma that we brought with us, and that karma that we have generated since we were born in this form, is constantly being touched upon by the gunas and activated. It seems to us, because of that these things are going on, that is an individual personality. As Krishna points out, absolutely in chapters 3 and 4, this is our fundamental delusion, that we are the doer and that we are responsible for the results of our actions. We own our actions. No, God alone is the doer. And if we live in that conception, if we live in that heart space, then God alone is the possessor of the karma. But as you pointed out, when a child is born, that child is not quite a clean slate. It comes with its prarabdha karma. If you will, it's the effects of its DNA. That's the nature part. Then, as you mentioned, there is the nurture part that comes along and inflects with the present time in which that child is born, all of the membership of that time and place. So the child's parents, the child's loved ones, other people in society that the child interacts with, insist that certain lower truths are the truth. And so that whatever sense of the divine that the child came with, and up till age between 9 and 12, we have a sense of the divine. We're still that silver thread is still very evident to a child, though they may not know what it is. That silver thread of connection to the divine.
So, Brother Shankara, two aspects to it. One that you mentioned was about the karmas, the prarabdha, and the new karmas that I'm making as I go along. And then you also mentioned about the gunas. Now, keeping in mind that you mentioned gunas are not my own. I don't own gunas. The gunas are there, but they are not my gunas. So, in other words, the gunas are there, meaning to me that they are the outside influence on me. If they're not
Who is
mine,
this me that you keep talking about, Vijay? Who
I'm
is this
talking of
me
me
that you
as a
keep
jiva
talking?
at this time.
There is no, the truth of your being is absolutely uninflected, is unchangeable, and it is the only influence that the gunas have is on this illusion of a me. So if adopt the witness position and stop identifying with what happens to you, to your physical and mental and intellectual being. Stop identifying with that, and your confusion about the gunas and all this will end. You'll see. It's like the wind playing through the trees. It's like breezes playing through a bunch of wind chimes. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the you of you. The you of you is simply experiencing it. But we get attached to our experiences and we immediately make them an I or me. I, me, mine. Krishna says explicitly and repeatedly that is our fundamental error. Thinking that you are something that has this idea of I, me, mine. Is that clearer?
Yes. I'll think more about it, contemplate on it deeply, and hopefully
Or
I'll
just
have a different experience.
in doing so, Vijay, and this is for all of us, not just you, for all of us, be in that witness position of seeing that what happens in your presence is the influence of the gunas, which are the instrument of Maya for creating this illusory, dreamlike existence. As Swami Vivekananda said, we are infinite dreamers, infinite dreamers. We are infinite dreamers dreaming finite dreams. As long as we believe in the dream, it troubles us. When we stop believing in the dream and saying, this is a dream, just like the dreams that I have when I'm asleep, and I wake up and I realize it's not true, so too this is a dream. A dream, and the reason it's so compelling and so convincing is that it is Brahman's dream. It is Brahman's dream of manyness. But you are that Brahman dreaming the dream of manyness.
Brother Shankara,
Yes.
even the prarabdha karma don't belong to me. They belong to this reflected ego.
Who
In
is
other words,
who is me?
me, I'm the witness. I'm the witness.
If you're speaking as the divine being, as the witness, you're right.
Yes.
They don't
Right.
belong to you. They're
So
just
when the
something
child is,
happening in your presence, like a movie you're watching.
yes, so the prarabdha karma are coming along from the previous birth attached to this newborn, you know.
They're just the impressions left on the mind stuff, the chitta,
Uh-huh.
and that chitta in its subtle form transmigrates, takes another form. Krishna explains this very explicitly in the second chapter. You take these forms, you drop these forms, you take another form, you drop that form.
So we just accept them as a whole. We cannot distinguish, you know, what is prarabdha and what is sanchita and what is agama.
Why bother?
Yeah, it's just a whole package.
Yes. So see, one way to visualize it is this great, huge array of wind chimes. Each of these wind chimes is one of those mental impressions. And so here come the breeze of the gunas. Here come the breezes of the gunas. Here comes a breeze of tamas and everything that can go thug, thug, thug. That wind chime that makes a dull, lifeless sound, makes that sound. And then along comes another breeze. It's the breeze of Rajas. And it makes this bright, active sound. Then comes along a breeze of Sattva. And we have this sweet, yeah, but all of those are just part of the illusion. They're all three robbers because they distract us and make us believe that what is happening is a reality rather than something of God's activity and, from the bhakti point of view, part of the splendor of God. All of the gunas and all the activities of the gunas from the bhakta's point of view are part of God's glory and splendor, but they're not the devotee. The devotee is the divine presence, the witness that is witnessing Brahman's stream of manyness. Anything else, dears?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swayam.
Yeah. So I was struck by that description of the sun rises and buries the dawn.
Swallows up the.
The dawn. So I was thinking the other way, the dawn allows itself to be enveloped by the sun. So likewise, if we stop struggling with these doubts and questions and instead just focus on God and allow God to just come and envelop us, that might be a very joyful way of doing this.
That
Sometimes the pull is better than the push. You know,
that is the desire of the bhakta, to be swallowed up, as to be absorbed, first to be held like a child in its mother or father's arms, first to have this feeling of being loved and cherished as a child is loved and cherished by a loving parent. And this we see reflected in the writings of these saints that we study on Monday evening. And then finally, absorbed. Union. No longer any sense. And the one, of course, the being a child in its mother or father's arms, is Savikalpa Samadhi. That's a way of talking about savikalpa samadhi. The absorption and extinguishment of any sense of selfhood is nirvikalpa. But all we need to worry about is, as you say, focusing on the divine and seeing everything that happens as the actions of the divine. As Sri Ramakrishna says over and over and over in the gospel, God alone is the doer. God alone is the doer. So thank you, Swami. You're right. Allow yourself to be swallowed up as the sun swallows up the dawn. So many metaphors, so many words, so many ideas. Basically, it is find your way to that witness position. Can't talk now.
I think, Brother Shankara, sometimes when we observe and realize that we have certain habits which are not easy to shed or to change, and then in light tones, including all of us, we have mentioned, oh, that's from my previous samskaras. Maybe I have a habit of overeating, or I have a habit of something else,
Mm-hmm.
which is ingrained, very strongly. It's a asana, but then it's coming from my samskaras, but it is not prarabdha karma. In other words, it's a tendency coming from the previous birth, but it is different from prarabdha karma.
Oh,
I'm
so
trying to understand.
why is it, Neera, are you so concerned about making these split-hair definitions? What difference does it make where it comes from? It's something that you experience in this moment. What difference does it make where it came from? We won't be able to figure it out anywhere. Anyway, karma is beyond, it's far too complicated for our limited minds. So don't be bothered about trying to figure out why. Where did it come from? It's a fact. What am I going to do about it? Certainly, I, have lived this experience of someone who ate too much. Finally, I just made a resolution. This is not good for me. This is going to kill me. I have to stop it. And so slowly and slowly, over 5 years, I went from 286 pounds to 218 pounds. That's the weight that I was when I came here. And that has continued, and now that weight is significantly less than that. But it's simply because I didn't try to figure out why or how it came to be that I was overeating like that.
Like you said earlier, that we just kind of observe the fact, recognize it, and without any judgments, be proactive and try to superimpose with a positive habit
Yes.
over it.
Yes.
That's all.
As Patanjali says, replace the lower samskaras with higher samskaras. Exactly. But trying to figure out the hows and whys, if it's absolutely necessary that we do this, we go to a therapist and let the therapist help us identify why we keep misperceiving what we're doing, so that we can begin to make a resolution that to behave in a way that is more auspicious for us. And in that way, therapists are tremendously helpful to us. Again, I speak from personal experience. This is not theoretical. Anything else before we go on?
Hari Om, Shankaraji.
Yes, Bala.
I just, the sentence really that, Swami is talking about, that, the path of devotion is really wonderful in this way. You don't have to struggle to gain the self-control or anything of that kind. So
Mhm.
made it so easy for anybody to follow. And also, in the Sermon of the Mount, he says the two main obstacles, what we go through is nothing but one is laziness and lack of enthusiasm. Those are the only two things that if we can overcome, it becomes, any of these paths would become easy. This is what the Swami says. That was in the Sermon of the Mount.
Yes. And where does that energy come from? Where does that, it's when we ally our waking awareness with our inner consciousness, when we marry our awareness to our God consciousness, and we do that through ritual, that is to say, uh, uh, prayer and japam and so on, and the prayer may be, strength art thou, endow me with that strength. Courage art thou, share that courage. Enthusiasm art thou, give me that enthusiasm. This was a prayer, a variant of this prayer, that Swahananda prayed, Swami Swahananda prayed every day. He asked the mother to share these great powerful characteristics that are talked about in the Chandi. Compassion in heart and relentlessness in battle are seen only in thee, O Devi. And so the Swami would pray, share with me, give me that compassion and that relentlessness in battle. We can make that prayer. And as Vivekananda says, the power is already within us. It doesn't come from somewhere else. It's within. And when we want it, and that wanting is pure and persistent, it will manifest itself. Doesn't mean it's a magic bullet and every day becomes easy peasy. No, no, no. But it slowly and slowly becomes better. Thank you, Bala. That was right on point.
Yeah, the prayer of all these things also, it is very important. And also in the beginning stages, we might get deluded. We are doing all this with our self-effort. But once we go further in this path, we understand everything is God's will. But we have to do, thinking in the sense, in the beginning at least, it is our will, we are trying to do whatever it is.
Yes. No
And I just
question
have
about it.
I have one more point to make. Actually, there is one shloka in Atma Bodha. Actually, this is about the sunrise and all these things, what we are discussing right now. It says, the Lord of the early dawn himself has already looted away the thick darkness when soon the sun rises.
Mm-hmm.
The divine consciousness of the self rises when the right knowledge has already killed the darkness in the past.
Yes.
Meaning of that shloka. I just want to bring it.
Well, it's exactly what the Swami is alluding to. And so the thing that is best for us is to keep it as simple as possible. Try not to think and reason too much. It's impossible not to do it somewhat. But keep returning to the prime directive. God alone is the doer. Everything else is some form of delusion. And so our prayer becomes, let me know this, Lord. Let me be this. Anything else? Thank you, Bala. All right. Now the Swami says, now here's the point. Only spiritual aspirants can feel and experience and express love. Only spiritual aspirants can feel and experience and express love. In human love, there is nothing but the attraction of God. In human love, there is nothing but the attraction of God. Swami Vivekananda said, do you think that the molecules arranged in a particular way would attract somebody? No, it is the divinity that attracts us. We cannot say that we love God. We cannot say that we love God. However, we may try. We feel we cannot love him. But do you know what happens? If you have any experience that makes you absorbed in the thought of God, you feel that attraction. It is something tangibly felt, and you go into ecstasy. This is Savikalpa Samadhi. It is something tangibly felt, and you go into ecstasy. That ecstasy that comes, you enter in it not because you love God, but because God's love is overwhelming, is so overwhelming that you feel it. Let me repeat that. The attraction is something tangibly felt, and you go into ecstasy. That ecstasy that comes, you enter into, not because you love God, but because God's love is so overwhelming that you feel it. And then you cannot but love him. The intensity in human love sometimes lasts for 10 days, but with God that intensity grows ever more intense. And that's what happens after Savikalpa Samadhi. The love for God becomes ever more intense. It's not something you're doing, it just happens. And so this is the road to the final self-extinguishment. And intoxicating madness in love comes when you learn to love him for love's sake. Intoxicating madness is what comes before Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And intoxicating madness in love comes when you learn to love him for love's sake. This comes only after you have had at least a glimpse of him. Savikalpa Samadhi. What are the spiritual disciplines on the path of devotion? Chanting the name of the Lord, meditating on him, serving him in others, other human beings and in other living beings, learning to see God in others, and serving the God within them, serving Jiva as Shiva. So I'm going to repeat that. What are the spiritual disciplines on the path of devotion? Chanting the name of the Lord, meditating on Him, serving Him in others, learning to see God in others and serving the God within them. These are the preparatory methods and means. Of course, you have to have ethical principles, also truthfulness, chastity, freedom from greed, things like that. But here is the point. If you can just chant the name of the Lord and think of God and meditate on Him, your life naturally becomes ethical. You don't have to struggle to have self-control. The more we advance toward God, the less craving we have for objects of the senses. Why? Because God is so much more powerful and so much more attractive than the things of the senses. So I'll read that again. The more we advance toward God, the less craving we have for objects of the senses. The supreme idea is the complete union and absorption in God, wherein love, lover, and beloved become one. Ultimately, the paths of knowledge and devotion meet in one place. Knowledge becomes love, and love becomes knowledge. Because there is union, a knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. Brahman is all of that. Knowledge and love and existence. That is Brahman. Existence is Brahman. Knowledge is Brahman. Love is Brahman. And so when you achieve this state of union, where knower, known, and knowing become one, then there's no longer any distinction. Okay. It's 11:58. Before we sign off, are there any other comments or questions, or any discussion that you'd like to have? Anything at all you'd like to say, contribute, or ask?
Well, I like this sentence so much, Shankaraji. You know, however we may try, we feel we cannot love him. But do you know what happens? You know, if you just, you may not have that feeling of love, but if you keep thinking it's a God himself overpowers it, and then you understand that para is really, we have to keep that in mind. That's
Yes, exactly, Bob. As a jiva, we are limited. As jivan mukta, we are unlimited. The jiva transformed and absorbed into that knowledge. As the Swami says, if you achieve that state of conscious union, savikalpa samadhi, where there's still an awareness of knower, known, and I am knowing that known. if you can achieve that even for a moment, it changes everything. And so this is when then there's no more struggle. There may be problems, there are always problems, but there won't be any struggle. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara, I have
Yes.
I'd like to read something. It's just a couple of sentences
Please do.
from the Upanishads.
Mhm.
It's from the area discussion of Brahman. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about it.
Okay.
He does not increase by the good action, nor does he decrease by the bad action. He indeed makes the man whom he wishes to lead up from this world do a good deed, and make him whom he wishes to lead down from this world to do bad deeds.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, and
Brahman is uninflected. Okay. Nirguna Brahman is there's absolutely nothing we can say about Nirguna Brahman. But what is being discussed there that has the intentions of leading this way or that is Saguna Brahman. Another way of saying Saguna Brahman is Ishwar. Ishwar has two aspects, Ishwari, the Divine Mother, and Ishwara, God the Father, the personal God. Why, what God's reasons are completely beyond our finite mind's ability to fathom. Why Christ said, "Ye have not chosen me, I have chosen you." In other words, I will lead you home. And why we can have confidence that since here we are on a Saturday morning doing this, that somehow Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Ishwari, Ishwara, have chosen us to lead us upward. We have no idea why. And why someone else is chosen to be led down, that jiva is chosen to be led down. The best explanation I've ever found is in Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. And in some, he simply says, this is Maya. This is the effect of manifestation. Manifestation, Maya, is inscrutable to us. We can't say why it exists. We can't say why it does what it does. But there is darkness as well as light. But what is being referred to there is Saguna Brahman, Brahman with attributes. Brahman with the attribute specifically of intention that you just talked about. Intention to lead some up and some down.
The way it appears to me that, we try to do things in life to the best of our ability.
Mm-hmm.
And this seems to be saying it doesn't matter whether it's the best or it's the worst.
Well, ultimately, it doesn't matter. How can it possibly matter to universe? But it matters to us.
Yes.
It matters to us as jiva. Because as Swami Vivekananda said, expansion is life, and doing things to their best is expansion, and contraction is death. Not caring and being careless and so on is contraction. So it leads to death. So, of course, what can it matter to universe? But as Einstein said, the idea of separation is a complete illusion. If anything at all vibrates anywhere in universe, the entire universe vibrates. So, to put that into Star Wars language, when we are inappropriate, inauspicious, there is a disturbance in the force. And it's felt by everyone. And we can feel it now. There's a great disturbance in the force. There's great anxiety. Any number of reasons for it. Health issues, political issues, all kinds of issues. There's a great disturbance in the force. People are very anxious. People are very afraid. And many human beings are also very determined to make things better. And so there's all this activity in the force. And any of us who are sensitive will feel that, and it will have an effect on us. Thank you, Robert. That was a very good reading from the Upanishads. And it's a description of the actions of Saguna Brahman. Anything else from anyone?
Brother, this is Katrina.
Yes, Katrina.
Hi, I want to make sure I'm understanding in terms
Good.
of the doer. I understand I understand that God, Brahma, is the doer of all things. And I just understand that I need to understand and know and remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not me being the doer. So everything that's happening is of God. But I do understand that it seems to me that we as human beings have an influence on what actually appears. But
why is that so, Katrina? It is because we are that. We are the divine being expressing itself.
Okay.
And so, yes, we have an effect. It's just exactly like Robert was saying. Saguna Brahman, Brahman with attributes, Brahman in the realm of vibration, which is the realm that we share, expresses itself through human beings. Apparently, according to the scriptures, we are the most powerful expressors of the intentions and actions of the divine.
Okay. So then that brings me to my next point, where is that if I chant the name, what to do, the path, and that is chant on God, think of God, meditate on God, serving God, leaving the steps that you talked about. The more and more that I do that, then as we as human beings, the more and more we do that, then the things that we via God actually create then will change, because we're chanting God, we're meditating on God, we're seeing God. And so then it kind of reminds me of things that I've read in terms of the world being a different place, because we Shed Guru said something the other day. It's like if we're different, then the world is different.
Exactly. It's exactly what Vivekananda says also. The macrocosm reflects the microcosm. When we change, the entire universe changes. And that's how powerful we are.
Okay.
But not as a little self, as the divine presence. And so all of these practices that you listed, chanting the name of the Lord, meditating, and so on, they purify our ability to express Saguna Brahman, purify the ability to express the Atman within.
Okay.
And so this is why some people are so incredibly creative, so incredibly wise, so incredibly capable, because of that uncluttered channel. They express those attributes of the divine without clutter, without being constantly distracted.
Okay, thank you. That answered my third question.
All right, Katrina, that's wonderful. Good. And thank you for contributing that. That's just right on point.
You're welcome.
Anyone else, dears?
So, Brother Shankara,
Yes, Swayam.
so when we are trying to express the divinity within us, are we expressing the divinity as Saguna Brahman?
Yes, of course. How else? There is no expression of Nirguna Brahman.
Okay.
And this idea of trying to express the divinity within ourselves. No, we don't try to express the divinity. The divinity expresses itself as we make what appears to be the self-effort to get everything else out of the way. Then it naturally expresses itself.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, dear, of course. That's exactly what we're here to do, to talk about these things. There is no expression of Nirguna Brahman, except that everything is the expression of Nirguna Brahman through just simply the existence, knowledge, and bliss or love that are the nature of Saguna Brahman. It's said that Nirguna Brahman does not exist. Nirguna Brahman is existence itself. Nirguna Brahman does not know. Nirguna Brahman is knowledge itself. Nirguna Brahman is not blissful or loving. Nirguna Brahman is love or bliss itself. So anything that partakes of any of those three attributes is Saguna Brahman, Brahman in vibration. As Sri Ramakrishna says, water still or water in waves, same water. Nirguna Brahman, water still. Water in waves, Saguna Brahman, same water. So when we are expressing the divinity, which we are constantly doing, but most of us are expressing it in a fragmented way. When we encounter a Swami Yogatmananda, we see it in perhaps an unfragmented way. He wouldn't necessarily agree with that. And I don't insist that I'm right. How can I possibly? But certainly there seems to be great clarity and great power there. That means there's less obstruction. Anyone else? Anything at all? All right, dears. Again, to all of you, Happy New Year. May it be the best of New Year's for you. And we'll close with this. Let there be peace throughout outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. And may you go forward in Mother's loving and protective embrace. So until tomorrow, when we have the puja, if you care to join us, at 11 a.m., we'll celebrate Holy Mother's birthday with song and with a puja led by or performed by Aditya Chaturvedi, and with all those things that we would normally do, except we won't have any crowd of human beings here, which would be joyful, but is still impractical. So,
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
all right. Until then, until the next time we see one another. Jai, 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 Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai.
Thank you.
Bye-bye all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.